Bold leaders, no buzzwords, no BS. This is Mastering Workplace Culture, real talk on crafting workplace cultures that deliver results. Each episode, we go beyond corporate speak and talk with leaders who've actually done it. Those who've faced breakdowns, made bold moves, and built organizations where respect and results carry equal weight. If you're ready to challenge assumptions, gain actionable inspiration from proven mentors, and build a workplace culture that actually works, this podcast is for you.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Mastering Workplace Culture. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today. Let's get right to that. Julia Gabor, in addition to being a dear friend, is an esteemed educator, national speaker, and startup founder. Julia proudly serves as the co-founder of KidGrit, championing K-12 students through innovative curriculum and workshops. Committed to empowering educators, she and her team provide evidence-based professional development and coaching. Over time, KidGrit's educator and student programs have naturally evolved into creating connections in a very disconnected world. With 23 years of professional experience, Julia has collaborated with renowned organizations such as LA All-Stars, the TGR or Tiger Woods Foundation, and Right Brain Books. Julia's dynamic roles at the TGR Foundation from 2006-2014, which is where I met you, Julia, a long time ago, included managing mentor programs for first-generation college students and overseeing the National Character Education Program, Tiger's Action Plan, or TAP, benefiting over time nearly 10 million students. A graduate of the State University of New York, Fredonia, and with a bachelor's degree in fine arts, Julia earned her master's in education leadership from Antioch University in 2012. Julia's action research produced a thesis focusing on connection strategies for middle school teachers to support positive teacher-student relationships, demonstrating that when students like their teacher, they engage in academic instruction more successfully and more quickly. Thank you, Julia, for joining us. We have been looking forward to this conversation for some time.
Thank you for inviting me. Always a privilege and an honor to be in the room and spaces with both of you who I watch on LinkedIn all the time. Congratulations on all your work. So important to have these kinds of discussions right now.
It really is. Well, I'm going to dive in with the first question, Julia, if you don't mind, because you're going to get one of us needing to do that anyway. So over the course of a very diverse career, you gained experience working within cultures that were, like many of us, fulfilling and challenging. What were the characteristics of the work cultures that enabled you to thrive? What were the signs of a culture that wasn't exactly inspiring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's see. I'll start with the things that don't help me thrive in work cultures. Coming from a very creative background as an artist who did everything from producing shows to being on stage to writing, having a lot of autonomy. In education, I really think of it similarly as an art. Education teaching is an art. And when you get caught in structures that don't allow for creativity, stagnant, I want to say like when they're stagnant, when they are inconsistent or not reliable, when you don't have voice in any organization, I think it's kind of the death of the life of an employee. And so throughout several of the different opportunities I've had in education, it's easy to be looked over. It's easy for people to forget how beautiful education is. And that becomes uninspiring. Whether you're in an organization that's thriving mostly, you can still be feeling kind of not seen and heard. When when it's working, when it's inspiring, it's because you have leadership with vision, people who take care of you. They create an organization of trust, and they value your voice and give you autonomy to create. Or for me, especially, I needed to be able to create and do my own thing in a lot of these organizations. And in the three that we mentioned, there were some roadblocks in terms of just the way they were structured, not intentional, but whether I could advance based on the structure that the organization had, because other people wouldn't advance who were above me. So I couldn't, even if I was showing great work and having great performance evaluations, I still wouldn't be able to advance because the system went like this instead of I couldn't do this over the person over me. That's not inspiring because you're not allowed to make the decisions you want, be seen, go on your own, do your own work. And they have to hold that true. I get like why they make those systems like that, but it's not an inspiring system for someone like Julia.
And many others. That issue of not being able to see if you want to progress, where can you go, happens in organizations every minute of every day. Definitely it happens in schools. So there's the lack of having someone with you in that environment that shows you pathways, that can be exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Agree. I think in school, in traditional schools, we see that because the system is required to be compliant to testing. This is not a new story, but it's really, really limits the creativity of an educator who loves education and wants to go and inspire a child. They become surprisingly, even though they hear it, burdened down by these rules and regulations. And that really showed us a need in our business of KidGrit to what we thought we'd focus on the child. Now we really focus on the educator to help them feel empowered and find ways to rebuild that curiosity and interest in teaching again. But it is a system that has been clearly defined out loud now as a broken system. So we're in a good place. So my company's in a good place.
Yeah, that's job security for sure. Well, and what's interesting, both Mark and I have got some friends that have been in television industry, movie industry, and it can be very dependent upon the lead boss in that environment. And it can either be horribly demeaning and diminishing, etc. But it can also be amazingly inspiring. So did some of the same things you described about, your own frustrations within the education system, did you have some of those same experiences in the quote film business?
That's a really good question. I think they're a little bit different. The reason, I should share that my mother is an international director and acting teacher.
Wow.
So while I had a very crazy childhood, I was surviving partially in positivity and productivity because after school, I would go into her theater classes or when she was directing plays and read lines with actors or lie on the floor and do breath work. It was one of the things that kind of saved me and balanced me from going in the other direction, which I had a good dance with also. But that I came from a theater background. I studied theater in college. I worked in New York off Broadway for 10 years after college. We did a show, Shakespeare show that got into the Edinburgh International Theater Festival. Like I was a working off-Broadway actress. And I thought to myself, I was going to move to California, to Hollywood, and become famous and make $1 million in the movies. And I was 30 years old, coming from a very creative, enriching, culturally diverse background of New York City. And I moved to California by myself. I saved up money waiting tables and I came out here by myself. And it's, of course, there's lots of little tiny stories in here, but I, for 2 years, had, 25 million jobs. It had nothing to do with acting or theater or film. And it had to do with hustle and transferable skills in terms of things that I know now about work ethic. But the business in California is a very different value system in entertainment than it is in New York. And it really, it doused the fire I had for theater and creativity. And it made me feel awful. I think you said demeaning. I definitely felt small. I definitely saw hundreds of women who looked pretty much like me, with kind of character actress, curly hair, kind of cute. And I thought in New York, I was an individual. I was unique. I was special. And then I came out here and it's that casting call, the herd of people. And casting directors would look at a resume and they would go, "Oh, you have so much theater, but you don't have any film or like TV. So who are you like?"
Oh, man.
The worst question, right? Both of you were like, oh, like the worst question to ask somebody who really is connected to the art of a craft. Like, I don't want to be like anybody else. And I want to yell and say, who am I like? That's your freaking job to tell me who to be like.
Yeah.
Because my job is to read it and be that person. So just tell me what you want. There are a lot of reasons. There's so many stories. But it wasn't a good fit for me. And the reason I wanted to make millions of dollars in the movies was to go back to New York and start a nonprofit for kids, where I was going to be the executive director and host kids in the inner city, like in this neighborhood I grew up with. Now is really a nice neighborhood, but when in the 70s and 80s was not so nice, and start a brick mortar building that had arts and dance and a social worker and saw families and did academic enrichment, like a community center, which is not so unique. I just wanted to do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened. That's not because I didn't make $1 million. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't it funny? You talked about transferable skills. You just named about 14 of them that probably helped you in every aspect of your career moving forward. So, including resiliency. So, Julia, let's bounce forward to where you and I did first meet at Tiger Woods Foundation, 2007, 2008, something like that. I was so impressed then, still am now, that your work uniquely positioned you to work with hundreds, if not thousands, of first-generation students who, thanks to the foundation, had their education, their books, their room and board, everything paid for, just to support their career goals. And it wasn't just the money. The foundation also worked very hard to support and mentor and to put those students in the best possible position to succeed. So your work there was always so inspiring. And I have to think that position, that responsibility shaped who you are as a business leader today, along with everything else we've already talked about. But you woke up every day and said, wow, I have literally thousands of students, young humans, counting on me and my team. How did that shape how you eventually created an intentional culture at KidGrit?
Mm-hmm. Mark, you just asked the best questions. Let me preface the program first, because you did a good job describing it, but I'm gonna share exactly what that program was. The program is called the Earlwood Scholarship Program, and it was designed to help first-generation students not only get into but navigate through a 4-year college experience. They did a lot of research. They were so smart in their leadership and how they put programs together, and still going. And they saw that there was a tremendous dropout rate. You can Google it, for first-gen kids whose families have not gone to college, and they're usually marginalized or under-resourced. And they saw many kinds of supports aside from money to help them be successful in college. And they created this kind of four-tier program. And it was that the scholarship was the last dollar in, making sure that whatever other financial aid scholarships, that if there was $5,000 left over, the Tiger Woods Foundation at the time, a TGR Foundation, would come in and supplement that financial aid for the student. The second thing they did was provide internship programs as much as they could through freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, really making their resumes as competitive as our other kinds of students going to schools whose parents might belong to, let's just say, a country club or have social capital, and those kids are getting internships. And so they wanted to make sure the kids had a competitive resume. And then the third thing they did was design professional development twice a year almost for these young scholars. Freshman year, it was designed to help them navigate campus, homesick, how to, stay strong when their family is saying, hey, miss you so much, because culturally they're not used to being far from them. How do they navigate the social, emotional way of being alone and independent for the first time? The sophomore year, it was designed to help them choose majors and kind of settle in. Junior, senior, you're getting into financial literacy, bank accounts, 401ks, how do you negotiate a salary? Like, it was so intentional how they looked at, this 4-year program for this child. And the last piece is what Mark is talking about, and it's a mentor program. And my charge was to come in and revamp what was already existing in the first year. And I got to do a lot of research on what it would take for a mentor to work with a young person in terms of, it's called asset-based relationship building. What assets could a mentor provide? And I parallel designed the mentor program with that professional development program. So that mentors knew freshman year, this is what I have to do. Sophomore year, this is where I could be helpful, et cetera, going forward. And what that provided me with was a lot of research for high schools, how kids are prepared, what happens to them during college, and what skills do they need when they graduate from college. So those skills, transferable skills, life skills, power skills, whatever, or durable skills, right? Human intelligence skills, there's so many names now, especially in the age of AI. And what we're all reading, the employers are asking for more now than they were, are those skills, right? And that is what we're doing at KidGrit. It is those resiliency, consistency, life skills, adaptability, pivot, critical thinking. All of those skills are more important now than ever because of what's happening with technology and the unpredictability of it. But it's also everything an employer has been asking for 20 years anyway. Like, those skills, will never go away on what people need to be successful in the workplace. And I really see it now more than ever. But it was the same then, and it is what we do at KidGrit in several different ways through programs or workshops. But that we want our kids to, regardless of academic levels, be able to navigate the job, hunt, force, interviewing, and understanding, especially with our marginalized kids, understanding that their challenges are actually the things that make them stronger, that make them more ready to solve problems and work in diverse environments because they've had a challenging past. And that's what we do at KidGrit. We help them see their strength in what they have felt has been something embarrassing, painful, or shameful.
Well, that's fantastic. Tell us a bit about the KidGrit organization. So you're a founder and a major player in how the operation happens. And I'll bet a lot of what you've learned and the research you did for that mentoring program translated into how you build, an organization that really doesn't have a lot of distractions, God forbid, incivility. Toxicity can happen in any organization. How have you been able to build, we call it an intentional culture, that is purposeful, positive, productive? It would seem that you had a lot of resources to draw from as you built that culture.
That, the startup world is, I thought I'm going to start a startup. And
I warned you.
well, I don't know. It's like, I think for the last 7 years, we just turned 8 years old this year. I feel like I've been running a business, and this is the first year I could call myself an entrepreneur. And there's a difference between running a business and being an entrepreneur. And as many people can tell you, or you could read about the life of a startup, and people are writing books about it, and they talk about leadership and big expansion, and do you take investment, or, all these things. If you are purpose or mission driven, it's almost like you have blinders on, and it doesn't matter what anybody says, you're going to do it. And also if you have a mission and you're driven and you have your blinders on and you have resilience and you have grit, look out. Because no matter how hard it has been to develop and build a company, or keep staff or deal with finances, we have stayed the course. And people, they tell you, they write about it all the time. People in your life will tell you you're crazy. You're never going to make money. It's not a good life for you. What are you doing? It's like people will tell you stop, and you don't, right? Or I didn't. And there did my partner, or, we're a boutique agency. We have very small staff, but we stayed the course. So building culture has mostly to do with some of these skills, right? Like, I am an authentic leader. I am a transparent leader. When it is hard, I don't pretend everything's okay. When I've had contractors during, our first 3 years where we weren't getting paid in the cycles that schools pay, right? Which I didn't anticipate. I didn't know. Like, I didn't have any business acumen in education. I was like, we can't pay you for 3 months. Entrepreneurs tell you, oh, that happens all the time. Business people be like, you need to close your business. It's not financially viable.
Yep.
Right. And so you have to make a decision, right? As a leader or, a founder, like, do I believe enough in this work that we're going to get through this? And if I tell you that happens so many times in a 365-day year cycle, it happens all the time, questioning, like, this is a crazy thing we're doing right now, because we had no initial investment. It was an idea and a dream and hope. So we're here 8 years later. Yeah. I mean, it's really, but it's building a culture of trust and authenticity and transparency and grit. We have had 2 salespeople over the course of really the last 3 years that it wasn't for them. They came in, and I couldn't onboard them enough to say, this is not a stable business, right? You're going to get transparency, a lower base salary and a very high commission. If you can sell, you can make a lot of money. And it wasn't steady enough for them from a traditional education sales background. So, when I was looking at some of the questions in advance, I was thinking, oh, don't ask me about staff culture. Like, they didn't stay, But I thought about it, and I couldn't have warned them anymore. I think people think that they can manage it, but it's very volatile, the work that we do. And you have to bring in people that are ready for the ride, the roller coaster, that also believe in here, right, in their hearts and spirits and souls, that this is really making change. We see it when we train. We see it in the kids, but we see it in the videos they send to us. We don't have formal data around our programs, but that is getting in the way of the good work, right? Where data becomes the stop instead of the work getting out there. And that's something new I really paid attention to, that, people who are looking only at data and buying programs because of data, not because of impact, and is another one of those systems problems, right? It's a bureaucratic, the district requires this to happen because it makes them risk, and they are risk averse in a career in a place where, again, this is like art, right? Like this is like every day you have a new palette when you walk into the classroom, and you can say, what do I want to paint today? How do I want to inspire something really beautiful with my children? How do I make them think a little differently? What color would I put on that palette, like on that, canvas, where they're going to be like, whoa, why'd you do that? Wait a minute. Right? You really want to get that, their brains and their, spirit going. So I don't know if that's a really good answer to your question.
I got to jump in, Julia, because I spent 15 years in nonprofit management. And what you're describing is exactly how every one of those 15 years were. YMCA, international organization, but for that little branch you're operating, that's exactly the gig you've got. And if the passion and the commitment and the true authentic leadership isn't there, you can't survive. You just won't survive. And I think about, you described how you warn folks, how you onboard, how you orient folks to say, this is not what maybe you're thinking it is. And you've got to give them as much support as you can, and then see. And my hope is you found some folks who did plug into those roles, who did have the heart and soul for it, and are a little less anxious about when the fees are coming in.
Yeah, it's true. I do. I have a core group. They're amazing, resilient. They're with the company, do or die. And what you get to do as a founder is say, like, when I build my 401k plan, how do I really take care of my staff? Like, it's up to me, right? Or do I have a succession plan? And what happens to this business? It might be going to one of those people, right?
Yeah.
And those are things that you get to do. Say, like, I cannot give you the full salary that you might be deserving, but I can take care of you in other ways. And that's really nice about developing a work culture where people feel seen and heard, because it's a significant investment in them and it's not transactional.
Yeah.
Julia, starting with you and your co-founder, Jeffrey, what role, especially now that you've been at this a while, and you say this is the first year out of eight now that you really felt like an entrepreneur. Well, you can't do that without accountability at some point, right? There, the pivots that have to happen, the bridge loans that have to happen, all of those things that come into play. But starting with you and Jeffrey, what role did accountability play, especially when working with your ambassadors and advocates and education partners? What happened when you saw firsthand, wait a minute, that's behavior right there. That isn't us. That isn't how we do things. And how did you fix that to where people knew, okay, I heard Julia, I heard Jeffrey, that's not okay?
So I'll start with the founder story of Jeffrey and I, because we together have had some challenges in building the company, talking about accountability and in a life way, where he, behind KidGrit, Jeffrey is a certified holistic wellness coach. I'm a youth development specialist, and great story of how we met another time. But we, when we got together and really started to think about what do kids need to be successful today in, 2016, 2017, 2018, we put together this holistic approach to working with kids that had to do with growth mindset, mindfulness, health and wellness, community connection, cultural diversity, empathy, and tolerance skills, and digital and social media consciousness. 10 years ago, we knew it. It was not a surprise to us that all this research is coming out now. And we built inquiry-based lessons in programs. It's a life skills program that has a capstone project at the end where the kids had to present what they were passionate about according to what they just learned about who they are and why these skills matter.
Wow.
Super creative, like mastery of learning about self and how I'm connecting it to my future. So Jeffrey and I were super excited and we're ready to go. Again, no investment. And I quit a job. I lived off of my 401k that I got from the TGR Foundation. And we built our first products, and that's how we started. Jeffrey is a father of 3. And we knew from the beginning that he could not come in full time because he would have to, have income. So he has had always served, we say he's serving more than one master, right? He has to be accountable to family and to his other job. And then he also had, he had cancer and it all came at once and around our 3rd year where he had to step back. And I pulled everything, I had to do everything. Again, business, not so great. He has a business background. For me, I was I can write program and I can train educators and I can do a keynote, but this was a loss for me. And he and I had to really have a reckoning about who we were in this work and how do we come together when real life, happens. And it is an ongoing journey. But that accountability, it was not because he didn't want to be present, but he couldn't be. And I had to go through a personal transformation of not being angry or resentful and really seeing the situation for what it was without, blackballing, be like, you can't, I'm doing this now. I mean, so much could have gone in a different direction. So foundationally, he and I have been through so much, we become stronger, right? We become a better force to build this now because of a past that has brought us through so many hardships. Again, our adversity makes us stronger. And that helps us form the culture about the kind of person that we want to work with. We built an ambassador program in a dream, literally saying, what if we could employ educators part-time? They kept their current jobs. And once every couple months, we had them trained. They could, geographically, if they're in Texas or if they're in Louisiana, they could go to Texas. If they're in South Dakota, they could go to North Dakota. So we have folks in different parts of the country who are in all areas of education, from probation to vice principals who are retired, school counselors, after school directors, who we never asked people to work with us. They came to us because they were inspired in one of our workshops. So we've never had to recruit. And we have mostly the same people since when we started. And they live on our website, and it's a very diverse group of people. It's a very diverse geographically, location-wise. And so they are accountable. We have their contractor expectations.
Yeah.
And when we onboard, it's a 40-hour training program. We're very clear about payment. We pay quite well. We're very clear about how you show up and who you are. We're very clear about how you present. We have a real evidence-based formula for inspiring educators. So our expectations are very clear, and it is a really strong instructional practice that inspires them while they're doing it. At the same time, they can go back and bring some of these things they learn into their classroom or school culture as well. So that was the dream, that they would stay longer in their field because they were getting, $10,000 extra a year or something. And they were still walking into classrooms of their own with a little more education and inspiration from KidGrit.
Wow. That's remarkable. Well, I want to see if I can. I think one of the biggest pieces you just described, Julia, was the responsibility for you and your partner to kind of have real-time reckoning conversations when the issues require it, right? And it wasn't someone's going to be, a dramatic failure, et cetera. But it's how do we take the unique opportunities from KidGrit and what Mark and I are both thinking, and we haven't talked about this, is business people need that too. Mm-hmm. They need to be able to have mature, calm conversations about very frustrating things that no one planned on. Mm-hmm. But that, in other words, you describe one of the best ways to seek out great fits for your culture. They saw you. They experienced the workshop. They were inspired by it, and they came to you. So you didn't have to try to hire more salespeople who might have very unrealistic expectations about the role that they had there. So is there, if you were to say there's a couple of things that you would tell every business leader that you may well be assuming your culture is okay, and you're probably wrong. And how do you become much more intentional about respect and trust to create a team that has truly got their hearts in it with you?
Mm-hmm. I think that we are really living in this disconnected world due to the pace of how we're living, the expectations starting with once you have it, once you have a kid, what they have to be involved with, what colleges are looking for, how early you have to start. I haven't even gotten to the technology, social media thing that's happening, but we are the helicopter parent came, the lawnmower parent came. We're disconnected from really showing you up as your true self and the things that are authentic in the way you live a life. And what happens, the result of that, and what I think happens in business is that we're so disconnected. We don't know how to have hard conversations and make them okay because we've been protecting people I'm going to go a little bit on a limb. It's not politics, but we've gotten so afraid of being inappropriate that we're not allowed, to have conversations that connect people to each other, where you have to go through a reckoning. You have to have a hard conversation. It should be okay to say, hey, we're doing some mission-driven work. This behavior is not acceptable without having a lawsuit against you. Yeah. Right. And as a leader, you have to be responsible for doing it in the right way. And if you're really smart and if you have some training and you care, it can happen. But you have to set up the circumstances for those courageous conversations. And you have to have your people understand that that's the culture that they're coming into. One of the things that I do with my full-time person who we work very closely together. We're like a dynamic duo. When we do an annual review, the questions that I give her, which are different every year to be prepared for, she gets to ask me the same questions.
Oh, that's great.
So she's reviewing me too. And it always ends with, what can I do better for you? And I have to be ready to hear from her. Right? I set up those conditions. She trusts me enough to say, you are amazing. You have so many great ideas. But when you have too many ideas, you derail all the other work that's going on. Mm-hmm. And for when I had to hear that and be like, but that's who I am. That's my job, right? I'm an artist at heart. Like all this other ego stuff comes in, right? For me. But I had to take deep breath in that moment and say, okay, like I hear you. And so what does that look like? It looks like when we're in meetings and something happens, I'm like, oh my God, you know what? Like when I feel myself wanting to interrupt and say, you know what? I have an idea. I go, I'm just going to write something right now, right? Because I'm being respectful to the courageous conversation that we had together. So I think in society, we're disconnected. I think that people are afraid to have hard conversations and they don't know how to do them. And again, we created for the educator and mission-driven folks a leadership program. It's a 12-month program once a month where we enter into how do you do this? And it's not really over complicated. It's super easy. It's not like you have to take a diagnostic that tells you that you're a pear or an apple or a banana, right? Like it is just, let's get real with each other, be authentic, and set up our own conditions for each other so that we can be more productive in our work.
That is desperately needed throughout the globe today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the emotional intelligence it takes to do that is just crazy. And, it's interesting, Julia, as long as I've known you, you immediately come across as a creative, but your level of emotional intelligence, you're like those come to Jesus meetings are important to you because it is transparency. It is that, that cliche authenticity thing. Like, no, we're not tolerating this because it's not the culture we want here. It's not okay. Right. So, yeah, interesting dynamic, especially because KidGrit is intentionally a remote working environment. You guys all work from exactly where you are in that moment. So when establishing that purposeful, powerful, positive culture, what challenges present themselves in a remote working environment?
I would love to be next to the people I work with, because I love my people, right? And we miss seeing each other. So the challenges are that you're on Zoom sometimes 6-7 hours a day between meetings with each other. And it is and because we're driven, I mean, this is like the pace of what you have to do in order to keep a startup going is really enormous. It's not, you don't clock in, you don't clock out. You'll roll through meeting to meeting to meeting, and that Zoom fatigue, boy, it hits different people differently, but it's not healthy. And I wish it were different. I would love to have, a little boardroom and we could meet there. And it also provides so much autonomy and how you spend your time and do your schedule, which is a blessing. Michelle, she left a kind of corporate education job and moved into the KidGrit world. And her and her husband, I mean, these are the true stories, right? They got to move out of Houston, which was a major city. He worked for doing accounting for a government agency, and he was remote. And they moved to a really beautiful Bay Area of Texas and got very engaged in the community, the quality of their life together. They built small businesses outside of work in that area, and their quality of life, I know, has improved. I know because when I met him after 3 years, he sat down next to me at the dinner table. He said, "You're the girl I hear on the Zoom all the time." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's nice to meet you." He said, "I just want to tell you something." He said, we love KidGrit. KidGrit changed our life and our marriage. And that's real life. Like, why, I think, like, why can't we think of businesses more like that? And I think a lot of people do now. They see that advantage. I think the challenge is with our, let's call them the Gen Zs, they're coming out of school, and instead of asking if they can, they're demanding that they are working from home and haven't had the experiences of the Gen Xers, or other people where you pay your dues for 15 years and you commute and you go to an office and you have to be there on time. All of those skills are really valuable. You kind of have to earn, this experience because it is a luxury. Yeah. I really think working from home is a luxury and you only know that if you've had the other experience. So I think, you have to be very autonomous and independent and disciplined time management is important. And some of our young people today are struggling with those skills at no fault to them, right? We talked about how they were raised, that there's a disconnection. Schools don't teach these skills as a course. So it can present a lot of problems, I think, for a lot of people. And it's also, this entrepreneurship thing became very popular with influencers, right? Where they're like, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then you're seeing 5 years later, when they stop being an influencer, they're having mental health problems. They're depressed, right? There's even a suicide story. Like these remote experiences can also be dangerous if you haven't had any foundational work kind of background also.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you're prompting in me is that, and Mark, you said it as well, Julia, you have a great deal of emotional intelligence. And I can't imagine that the business would have been operating for 8 years if you and Jeffrey did not develop that together around that business. And it is all too rare in many small businesses and certainly in many corporations, multinationals. So it's certainly an important skill set. And kids coming out of college, Mark, your primary first job with U-Turn was helping kids realize there's a lot you're not going to know. And you're going to love to say, well, I want X.
There's a lot you're going to hate.
Yeah. You got to go through and earn your stripes to be able to get some of the luxurious things 5 or 10 or 15 years later. Well, tell us a little bit about, you and I just talked about, Julia, the LA experience. Born and raised in New York, New Jersey, heavily involved in the fantastic theater world and community in that area. And now you're in LA, which is the left coast is seen as something pretty strange to the East Coasters, right? So are those two experiences and the appreciation you definitely still have for LA, I've already heard it, and for New York, New Jersey, does that help you look for diverse thinkers, diverse kind of skills, diverse generations as you guys continue to build the KidGrit company?
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. And I don't know, I guess it would have to do with my upbringing in New York, which was very diverse, broken home. My mother worked in prisons doing theater. She fell in love with an African-American man, and she brought him home when I was 6 years old. And he lived with us for our formative years. My father, it was another story. There's a lot of other
Leave it at that. Yeah.
I won't. But
that would require beer. Yes.
Yes, that's the after hours conversation. A really, really fun, curious, inspiring guy. Not without flaws, but also gave me a lot of my resilience because of it. Right. And I grew up a lot of times in the streets. I have a diverse rainbow friend group. I had not heard racial slurs until I was really kind of out of New York City. Whether I was in the suburbs or where I went to college. And so I was shocked the first time I heard a negative word about a race, because the way I grew up, these were the people, it was almost like a reverse experience for Black kids when they go to an all white college. Like that's how it was for me. When I went to college, they were all white kids. And I was like, ew, this, everybody's like a farmer's daughter, and there are all these like local guys who drive trucks, and I think they call them like something with a neck word. Like I hadn't really been exposed in a concentrated living environment like that. So, and then all of this kind of awareness and corporate rules around what diversity looks like, what equity and inclusion feels like. And I am someone who I always say, like, on my gravestone, it's going to say, like, one is not like the other. When I fill out forms for security and they say the first name of your husband's mother's maiden name, I'm like, oh, I don't have a husband. They're like, your daughter's favorite sport. I'm like, oh, I don't have a kid. Your sibling's favorite food. I'm like, oh, I don't have a sibling. Like, I don't fit in there. My family did not look like the families of other kids growing up. I have a chosen family now because I don't have that, I don't have graduations and birthdays and milestones. Like, I have had a very different life than most people, not all people. And so for me, I'm highly aware of diversity and equity and being included. But it's not because I took a course or read a contract. It's because of how I was raised and who I am. Right. And that again, it's authentic. It's just real. And there's nothing wrong or broken. But my acute awareness about it in terms of who I look for to be a part of our team has mostly to do with relational, if I'm interviewing. And if they've had adversity, I'm hoping that they're going to come in and bring that to our culture so we can, work with those kinds of strengths inside people. So I don't know. I mean, the New York, LA thing is, it's also another conversation, but in New York for sure, when you ride the subway in New York City, it is unchanged in terms of being one of the best transit systems, an urban system that gets every class of person from one point to another point. When you have a city that's built like that, the mesh of people, the lady with the fur coat and the Bloomingdale's bag and the Indian cook who smells like curry and the Mexican busboy and, 8 African-American high school kids, like with loud music going on, a homeless guy, and you're all taking the same train. Like, where else does that really happen so well? I know there are issues, like colleges, but it's been for decades that has been such a really promising practice of New York. LA does not have that.
No. LA has, and I remember
LA has the 405. That's what LA
They
has.
do. And I remember a huge Firestone building in LA. I don't remember exactly where it is anymore, but that Firestone wanted to make sure that they connected to all the car makers in LA and even the West Coast, because the more cars that are sold, the more tires they sell, which means no transit, not really public transit at all. Very different kind of that individual kind of, I can go drive anywhere I want and I don't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah, I just heard that. But the person who told me that said it was Ford from Ford Motors. Maybe it's the same, but it was when they were designing it, they wanted people to use more cars. So it was Henry Ford, I think. So
yeah.
Told me that. So same story, but it was designed differently. I mean, listen, I'm going to give LA a break. We have earthquakes here. You can't build an underground rail like with earthquakes.
No.
That doesn't make any city planning, very smart either. So
yeah, there was that
tough situation.
Julie, we have just a few minutes left. And as always, in every episode, we want our audience to get to know you a little bit personally. So when you're not on an airplane or keynoting or program developing or leading your team, what are you doing now for fun?
The first thing that comes to my mind is I learned how to play beach volleyball when I moved out here. And I play every Sunday that I'm here with a group of women who are over 40 and up to 60. And we play for 3 hours every Sunday morning. And if I had the time, space, and luxury, I would play every single day. Wow. I love the feeling of being outside in the fresh air, 365 possible days a year. It just is so amazing. I really love it. And I feel like if I had been raised here, I could have been somebody. Yeah. I could have been a contender, right?
Yeah.
I I love spending time with my chosen family. I have two really good friend families here. I'm godmother to their sons and have been with them in the best and worst of times for all of us. And dinners, wine dinners, great food, just sitting, talking, connecting, like that social kind of bonding is really valuable to me because I do spend a lot of time by myself. So I love those really like grounded, deep experiences of sharing time and laughing together. And what else? I have a gratitude practice that has helped me through so much of this work in the last 8 years. We actually do a kind of corporate session on gratitude as a practice for mental health. And it's just a really beautiful way to shift perspective in real time. If you have a practice, not just be like, oh, what do I do with gratitude? So I have a passionate feeling and practice about gratitude. And I think when it really comes to the work is my passion. I love speaking. I love workshopping. I love the aha moments in our sessions that I hope will mirror what's happening with a teacher to a student in learning. I love that. And I'll share part of the thing that I think makes our trainings evidence-based and very instructionally successful is that when we build trainings and workshops, and Mark, you've been in some of mine before, and I didn't know I was doing this then, is that my background as an actor, the way you looked at it as an audience was that you're bringing them on a journey with you and that they're not at you or someone watching you, like they're engaged with you. And I wanted to be an actor so that I could tell stories that would make people think differently. That they'd say, oh, that character did that thing. I never thought of like doing something like that. And I believe that the respect we have for audience as a company and how we walk into that space, how we set it up, who the educator is, these, kind of beautiful shining lights, how we treat them in the session. And by dropping like little nuggets of practical things they leave with right away, bringing them through the journey and having them leave thinking there's something else I can do to make a difference. I know it sounds cliche. It is the magic sauce to our trainings, that how we see the group of people that's in front of us.
Powerful.
Well, Julia, your passion is and always has been your strongest trait. And I'm so glad to have known you all these years. And I'm thrilled that you joined us on the podcast today. So thank you.
You guys, I'm so excited. This is like a crossover podcast, right? Where it's not an education podcast. It's about the work. And I love that. And I'm excited. And thank you. And please keep going with this work that you're doing. It's so needed, especially in this very transitional time of workforce and what's going on with our kids coming out of school and, and AI, which is not bad, but just really understanding how to make it all come together. Your work also, good does come first.
Well, thank you, Julia. Just delightful to learn from you today. And I must say that as we have to close this particular episode, there are more episodes coming. So watch for them on your favorite podcast platforms. And you can always find us at masteringworkplaceculture.com. And again, Julia, for all of the learning today, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
This has been Mastering Workplace Culture. No jargon, no corporate fairy tales, just leaders who show their scars and celebrate their wins. Do something with what you heard today. Subscribe, share, take action. Creating a culture that equally values respect and results is your responsibility. Go own it. When you're ready to make that happen, we're here to help. We'll catch you in the next episode of Mastering Workplace Culture.